Hello and welcome to my video presentation. My name is Felix Houillet, and in this video I'm going to talk about a shift in the gaming industry in which the so-called Battle Royale mode had a great industrial impact on how some games are made and sold. I will specifically take a close look at the Call of Duty gaming franchise, as this is the one I'm most involved in myself. Call of Duty has had a remarkable past of rising up as a gaming brand, taking up the spot of being the gaming franchise with the most sold copies for a long time. Even though nowadays other gaming franchises such as Grand Theft Auto, League of Legends and so on are taking up a big chunk of the gaming industry, Call of Duty now again is up there among the big names and especially the big numbers. So why is that? The answer to that is relatively simple: Battle Royale. The hyped game mode that made massive amounts of money and, for example, made Fortnite one of the best known and most played games ever. The premise of this hyped particular game mode is quite easy. You and a lot of other players get thrown onto a massive playground in which y'all have to fight each other. You start with nearly nothing on your hands, so you need to loot equipment and weapons for survival. When you're with a team of up to 4 players, you might communicate and cooperate with them to survive. When an enemy does damage to them, you might need to revive them. As an additional threat, besides real players who pose as enemies, there is also a harmful zone shaped around a safe circle which closes progressively until it is as small as a schoolyard. The game ends when there's only one last person or team alive, who then is crowned the winner of this match. So the basic goal is to survive and to outplay your enemies to finally be the last player or the last team standing. As mentioned before, Fortnite was one of the first titles to inherit this game mode. Eventually, the game and the specific game mode became famous by holding this basic premise throughout a match. Games making use of this Battle Royale idea had a big industrial impact, which only seemed to constantly grow. And that's also probably why Activision, the publisher behind Call of Duty, decided to make a version of their game which made use of this game mode. On the one hand, the announcement of a Battle Royale Call of Duty made a lot of publicity because there was quite a hype about Battle Royale in general. And having a Call of Duty with that game mode had a lot of people on the edge of their seats. On the other hand, so I guess, Activision wanted to have a part in this freshly upcoming industry, because the commercial aspect of Fortnite and its way of producing income was and still is extremely successful and innovative. So let's take a general look at what makes the big difference between a regular game you can buy at a store, for example, and a game like Fortnite or Call of Duty's Battle Royale version Warzone. For the one part, most games are produced by a developing team in the course of a few years, and once the game reaches a certain stage in production, it gets promoted and then finally released at a specific date. Hopefully, the game at this point is a finished product which now can be sold for years to come, even though the price might drop. So here we get a developed, finished item, sold at a price just like a book or a movie. With most online games in the past decade, things were changed up a little bit. More and more, the additional content came into play, which had to be bought additionally or was free for the players who already had purchased the base game. This content is not part of the original product and is also primarily developed after a game itself is already released. Now, Fortnite and eventually Call of Duty Warzone took this idea of extra subliminal content to the next level. While their base game is downloadable and playable for free, a lot of cosmetic items such as character models, certain weapons or even dance moves that can be performed in-game have to be bought as additional content. A company like Activision wouldn't have chosen such a path for such a successful franchise as Call of Duty is if this wouldn't make up financially for the effort put in the base game. Probably in the end they even make more money by offering this free-to-play but pricey to look cool when doing it type of game model. I have to admit that I myself by now have spent more money on cosmetics than I would have on a full-priced blockbuster gaming title. And to be honest, I barely realized it. Furthermore, there are seasons implemented in those games, which constantly change up the map you play on, add new content and drive forward the story. This also makes a lot of content only temporarily available, which on the one hand drives players to purchase those limited items and on the other hand keeps the game fresh, that is, making it feel interesting by having new things to explore and test. But once a multiplayer game, especially a competitive game where players all around the globe go against each other, implements content that is exclusive for the people who pay for it, there is a slight backlash by the gaming community. When we go back 10 years, the players would have let loose a medial shitstorm onto developer teams who made parts of their online game exclusive for the paying customers. But by now it got rather normalized, where the only concern that remains is that some of the purchasable items may give you a favor while competing with others. Most games try to find a way around by only selling digital cosmetic products that don't change the power of your character or your guns. Still, some of this content is seen as a so-called pay-to-win mechanic. For example, a purchasable character skin that is completely covered in black, so it's harder to see for enemies than any other playable character in the game, is considered pay-to-win. As if it's not weird enough that you need to pay real money for digital in-game cosmetic items, you often don't even own them once you paid money for them. The so-called Battle Pass is a progression system that Fortnite first implemented 3.5 years ago. Many games followed their lead as it became obvious that this system is a real cash cow when it comes to earning money through a free-to-play title. Basically, the Battle Pass consists of 100 levels that contain various cosmetic items for the game. By playing the game and earning XP, that is, experience points, you progress through the levels and unlock the items that are bound to each individual level. When you didn't pay for the Battle Pass, out of those 100 levels you might get around 10 items. But in the case you paid, you get a new item for every level. The Battle Pass is relatively cheap regarding the fact that there are 100 things to unlock. But the time you have to unlock all of them is limited to the ongoing season. This of course drives the players who spend money on the Battle Pass to constantly try to play the game as much as possible so they can unlock all the things in time. Accordingly, in fact, it possibly can happen that you pay 10 euros for digital cosmetic items that you never will even get. For a person that is not involved in those kind of game mechanics, I bet it sounds very weird and stupid. And thinking about it from an outside perspective, I have to admit that it is quite weird. But that is how those games function nowadays, and how they bind players to the game to keep them interested and involved. Ain't that interesting that such a game needs to have those systems implemented to excite their community? Shouldn't such a form of entertainment be entertaining enough itself without having to offer constant content and the feeling of progression? Well, to me it is, but a lot of players lose their interest when there's nothing new to discover, and I think that's also fully understandable. Time is very worthy, and spending it with repetitive things you already have seen and experienced before might bore a lot of people. So I assume those kind of things to be necessary. On the one hand, as things that the companies have to offer as purchasable items in the game to make up for the fact that the game itself is free. As well on the other hand, as things that are fresh and exciting for the players to keep them interested, keep them playing, and accordingly keep them buying in-game items. Regarding that, I want to mention that Call of Duty tried to hop onto the Battle Royale hype train 2 years prior to the release of Warzone, which in the end was and still is a great success. But the first time they tried, they created a finished product, selling it at a full price and not offering new additional content at all or at a constant rate throughout the following month of its release. Quite the same happened to another big gaming franchise called Battlefield, which tried the same but also did the same mistakes. So it seems as it's not particularly the game mode that makes those Battle Royale games so famous and commercially successful, but it's the way those games are offered to the customer. Because it's free, there is near to none threshold to try the game. And once you tried it, you may like it, play it more and more, and eventually you get to a point where you assume that you play that game that much that you could also spend some money on it. and it doesn't feel like much. You spend about 10 euros every 2 months when there's a new season, just so you can get the newest characters and dances and emotes and everything that is really new. If you don't want to pay that, you are still able to play the basic new content of the new season, but you might feel left out a little bit, seeing the other players having fun with the new cosmetic stuff, while you are being starved with what the new season basically has to offer, and that is often very little. And I bet that this is on purpose. In the end, the developer teams have a big publisher behind them whose goal is simply to make the most money out of an IP such as Call of Duty. And by choosing to put their resources into such a game and specifically such a payment model, I assume they made a good choice regarding the financial output of the Call of Duty gaming franchise. So this is it for now. I hope you were able to follow my words and understand my line of thought. I tried to explain, well, the whole context, but maybe for people who are not involved in this kind of topic, it's hard to understand. But I hope I made it understandable. To end things, thank you for your time and your attention, and have a great day.